The castle where the story begins is actually a high-security military prison under the command of Colonel Ed Winter. Lieutenant Irwin was sentenced to 10 years in prison, transferred the same day of his trial. In his office, Winter mentions how Irwin should be honored rather than transferred to the prison. Despite his admiration, Winter reluctantly agrees to house the new prisoner. The lieutenant arrives to be received by all the inmates who heard the news of his imprisonment. The inmates bet on how long the lieutenant will last in prison, with some men considering this inhumane. Lieutenant Irwin has all of his belongings confiscated during his check-in, except for his family photos and academy ring. Irwin is greeted by Winter, who shows excellent courtesy and admiration. He then asks him the same question he asks all convicts upon arrival, about what does he expect from his stay at the prison? But the lieutenant only answers that he hopes to serve his sentence and return home, nothing else. The next day there's a brawl in the basketball area, where an inmate confronts Thumper, a large-built man. As soon as they begin to fight, inmate Sam Yates begins his job as a bookie among the prisoners to decide who wins. Irwin watches curiously as all forms of security seem not to care about the fight between the prisoners, but just as Thumper gets a helping hand in the fight, Winter sounds the alarm, causing everyone to take cover by lying on the floor. The only one standing is Thumper, who is shot from a distance by one of the guards. Moments later, Irwin witnesses the abuse of Beaupre, a prisoner with a bad temper, toward Ramon Aguilar, a stuttering prisoner of few lights during the construction of some kind of rock wall for Winter. In his cell, Irwin is visited by Yates, who introduces himself as a former officer, a helicopter pilot whose father fought with Irwin in Hanoi. After that, Irwin is late for his visiting hours, where he is visited by his daughter Rosalie. The two have a raw conversation, where she brings Irwin's absence as a father during her youth and that he shouldn't expect her to forgive everything so quickly. Still, she wishes him well, and they agree to write to each other. In the yard, Irwin meets Aguilar, who greets him emotionally. Irwin asks him why he is there, and Aguilar confesses that he was a former Marine corporal, but he must now remain there because of a bad mistake he made. Still, Irwin cheers him up happily. From his office, Winter sees the salutes between Irwin and Aguilar, going against the rule of no longer treating each other as soldiers, so he asks Peretz to reprimand Aguilar, making him hold his salute in the freezing rain. This angers Irwin, who tells Aguilar that he shouldn't keep doing it and that he can lower his hand. This draws the attention of Peretz, who forces Aguilar to keep his hand raised. At the confrontation, several guards beat Irwin, leaving him on the floor. After a brief conversation with Winter, it is decided to punish Irwin for interfering with Peretz in the reprimand, so the next day Irwin is sent to haul rocks under the sun. The convicts place their bets with Yates, and Barnard tries to help Irwin the best he can, telling him he can at least take off his shirt. In doing so, Irwin reveals a series of scars on his back. Some of them are marks from electric shocks due tortures, a consequence of his war days. Hours pass, and Irwin is still at work, with the convicts encouraging him. Just as he is carrying the last rock, Beaupre causes him to stumble, hitting his head on the rock itself. Still, he manages to complete his task, but Peretz says that he has to restack the pile of rocks again. Winter calls Irwin to his office and boasts that there have been fewer incidents of escapes and acts of rebellion under his tenure, fearing that the former lieutenant may think of a change in that record thanks to his fulsome wall. That's when Winter sends a bulldozer to tear it down the wall and destroy the prisoners' morale, but Aguilar gets in the way of the vehicle, stopping in its tracks. The alarm sounds, and everyone goes to the ground except Aguilar, who remains upright. Winter gives an order in the face of refusal, and a rubber bullet hits Aguilar's head, a fatal wound. In a rage, Irwin appoints former Sergeant Major Delvo to order the prisoners to line up, treating them like soldiers. They all do as requested to hear Irwin's parting words to the late Aguilar. Winter interrupts them with an early alarm to eat, and they all break ranks with a military-like salute gesture. Brigadier General Jim Wheeler visits Irwin as a friend, requested by Winter to talk to Irwin to corroborate the stories about his improvised army. In parallel, Winter receives a letter from Irwin, saying that they are prepared to kidnap Wheeler if he doesn't resign by 12:10 that day. Wheeler tells Irwin that he has already exonerated Winter 3 times, so he has more power than Irwin as a prisoner. Winter initiates a pre-riot operation to protect General Wheeler, but it ends up more over the top than it should be, attacking the inmates with a water cannon and almost throwing gas bombs at them. In the end, Winter understands that it was just a blockade on Irwin's part and orders finishing the operation. Wheeler scolds Winter, considering it absurd that an inmate could kidnap him. He tells Winter that if he wants him to, he will move Irwin to another prison, but Winter refuses the offer out of pride. It is then that Winter goes to the cells and reveals why Irwin is behind bars. Lieutenant Eugene Irwin violated a presidential order, sending troops on a mission to Burundi that resulted in the execution of 8 soldiers. Winter proves that they cannot trust Irwin's pride and that the consequences will be bitter for them if they do. As punishment, those convicts who colluded with Irwin are booked and isolated. At lunchtime, 2 of Irwin's colleagues fake a fight, with the guards taking them out of the mess hall, so the inmates can be alone to prepare their strategy. Irwin proposes Winter violating the Uniform Code of Military Justice by losing control of the facility. They all agree, and Irwin begins to train them for the attack, consisting of avoiding barricades, guards, helicopters, and finally, raising the flag upside down in front of General Wheeler, showing him that Winter is no longer fit to command. After this, Irwin decides to talk to Yates, revealing that he already knows about his deal with Winter. He accuses him of not being a true soldier like his father and questions whether his betrayal is worth it. Yates visits Winter immediately, telling him that he won't survive in prison for long since they know he's the snitch. Winter denies Yates' request but promises to isolate him from the others for protection. One of the inmates bursts into the conversation, calling Yates a rat. Fearfully, Yates asks Winter again for his release and if necessary, he will bring more information for the next morning. A chaotic inspection of the guards begins, trying to find the missing flag. All the inmates gather in the central courtyard, but Winter realizes this is just what they want, so he sends all the guards outside, only to find that the exits have been blocked. During the encounter, several inmates are injured with rubber bullets. The few outside guards are restrained, and everyone release the isolated inmates, including Yates, who join the cause. Some of them manage to call General Wheeler, informing him of the raid, and with the help of materials sheltered inside the rock wall, they begin a counterattack. Irwin communicates via walkie-talkie with Winter, openly expressing his intentions to take over the prison. The prisoners pull out a catapult they built, which will be protected by several other prisoners using trays as shields. Winter deploys his anti-riot unit, engaging the rebels head-on. The catapult manages to make a full impact, destroying part of Winter's office and setting it on fire. When Winter inspects the stone thrown at him, he realizes that it is the same one from the wall where Aguilar marked his name. As the water cannon arrives, Beaupre decides to engage the guards on the run, but the inmates manage to cut off the vehicle's water supply, leaving the way open to fight the guards. Winter receives a call from General Wheeler announcing their arrival, and decides to call in the reinforcement helicopter. With the help of the now acquired anti-riot vehicle, the inmates turn the water supply back on and manage to press the helicopter so that Yates manages to get on it and fly it. However, the chain breaks, and Yates dangles from the helicopter. Still, he manages to slowly climb up to take control. Yates decides to confront the rubber bullet shooting guard who killed Aguilar, who thinks it's time to switch to real bullets. Despite taking direct hits, Yates stays in the air and sacrifices the helicopter's tail to take out the gun turret, killing the guard on the spot. This act causes Yates to lose control and ends with the aircraft impacting the ground and rolling with him still inside. Irwin runs to save Yates just in time before the helicopter explodes. The battle concludes, and the inmates line up in military ranks to greet an angry Winter. He has them surrounded by shooters and orders the inmates to get down on the ground or else they will open fire. No one listens until Irwin orders them to do so, all except Irwin himself, who refuses Winter's request to give him his flag. Instead, he marches to raise it upside down. Winter, filled with anger, orders to open fire, but all the shooters choose to disobey him. Winter looks for support, but Peretz orders everyone to remain in place. Tired of such insubordination, Winter himself shoots Irwin before raising the flag. Peretz confiscates Winter's gun and handcuffs him. Although Dr. Barnard tries to help him, it's not enough to stop the bleeding. Everyone then realizes that Irwin raised the flag correctly, so they proceed to salute in his honor. Although all was already concluded, Wheeler's group arrives to stop the mutiny. The film closes with a tribute to the fallen comrades at the rock wall, including the names of Ramon Aguilar and Eugene R. Irwin.